Hi guys, back to Cecilia's Cellar Door. Thanks for joining us. It's awesome to have you back. And what we're going to be doing this month is our next wine by the month here at Cecilia's Cellar Door. Each month we feature a new wine list, a new winery, so you can enjoy and celebrate more of Australia's great wine here at Cecilia's in Taroom Bay. This month, I'm really excited to get the guys from Wild and Wilder in. They make an awesome range of wines that you need to try. I cannot rate them highly enough. They're a fantastic mob down there. They do a great job for great value wines. So I want to get the guys in. This is the range we're doing. This is some of the wines that we're going to be getting ourselves into now. It's called the Wild and Wilder range. And we're going to do everything from an awesome Riesling to a Sauv Blanc, a Chardonnay, a Shiraz, a GSM, a Cab, and then we're going to get into one of their boutique wines. And I'll tell you what, I had this on the weekend, and it's so bloody good. So we're going to get to know. I do have a surprise package as well, one right at the end. We're going to try something I'd never heard of. I'd never seen. I just never heard of anything like it. I'm hoping it's going to blow your socks off as well. But I'm not going to tell you about it now. I'm going to tell you it at the end. All right. So you have to stay watching. But I'm stoked to have on board the winemaker from Wild and Wilder. That's Paddy, and he's actually joining us today. Let me see if I can get him in from Adelaide. Paddy, are you there, mate? Welcome to Cecilia's pop-up cellar door. Oh, no, Paddy, I can't hear you anymore. I muted you. Let's unmute you. There you go, Paddy, you're on.
Perfect. How's it going?
Good, mate. Now, you're based in South Australia.
That's right, yeah. I used to be in Melbourne, actually, but relocated over here a couple of years ago. So, not a bad part of the world, especially this year.
But from your accent, we can all hear you're a good Scottish man.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good pick. So I've got the most Irish name in the world, so it normally throws people west. But I am from Edinburgh originally.
Beautiful. So what does a man from Edinburgh end up making wine in South Australia? I mean, you're a long way from home, and how did you end up there? It must be an interesting story.
Oh, well, look, the first thing to do is drop out of university. That's core. So, and the second point of note as well is I've kind of followed my passion. There'll probably be a lot more money selling whiskey, which people often tell me when they meet me overseas. So, but yeah, I kind of really fell into wine actually doing a year backpacking in Australia in 2003. Okay. So I kind of spent 6 months working for a wine importer in Melbourne. He was bringing in some really good Burgundy, and then I did a vintage in the Yarra Valley, and then I kind of really just went from there. And then kind of relocated out here 6 years ago to start help building the brand. So so I work with two masters of wine. We're quite unusual.
I said the brand got bigger and bigger. It's really grown the brand in the last few years.
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, I work with two masters of wine, so we're pretty unusual to have two MWs on board. So it's a kind of a good range of tasting palettes that we have there. So one of the guys, Giles, who kind of really drives the stylistic side of the project, has done kind of quite a lot of international judging as well. And so we've really kind of taken things forward, and we've got a bit of international presence now as well. We've not quite a small wine.
Mate, that's amazing. Now, talk me through what was the brainchild, or where were you going with the Wild and Wilder brand?
Well, look, when we did the first vintage of Wild and Wilder, it was kind of late 2000s. And the idea originally was to just focus on something that was kind of outstanding value for money, but kind of really classic grapes from classic regions of South Australia. So actually the first wine that we produced, which we'll taste today, the Opportunist Shiraz, we kind of produced the first vintage at a time when kind of we got a great deal, actually, to be honest, on a parcel of amazing fruit. So that was kind of the inspiration behind that name, the Opportunist. So the first wine was kind of really a bit opportunistic. And when we kind of come to it, you'll see it actually has a vulture's head on the label, which is kind of part of the story. But the idea with Wild and Wilder was really to kind of do stuff that was really great value, easy drinking, and mainly around fun.
Good.
And that's I can talk you through the names as we go.
We're all about fun, mate. We just, that's all we do up here on the Central Coast. There's nothing else to do but drink and have too much fun. Now, let's get into this, because I'm thirsty as Wednesday and I'm thirsty. We're going to start off with the Riesling.
Okay.
I love the labels, by the way.
Thank you.
This is a Clare Valley Riesling. So the Courtesan. Very nice.
So I'll give you a bit of an explanation on the labels, actually. So there's a couple of original sketches that were done originally by a French, kind of effectively a political satirist in the 1800s. And his thinking was that what you see, he was kind of quite critical of the politicians of the day. So his thinking was that what you see isn't always what you get. So that's kind of part of the reason that we have these kind of old-fashioned attire. So these, the Shiraz and the Cabernet that we'll try were some of the original sketches. And we like the idea of kind of, what he was trying to showcase was the fact that the animal head was meant to represent the true character of the person, which is partly kind of why the politician was a bit of a vulture. And we kind of took that idea and ran with it. So we kind of took every animal head to represent a little bit the character of the wine. So with Riesling, we all love Riesling. I think everyone in the wine trade does generally love Riesling. So the idea behind the Courtesan was kind of something that steals your heart. And we kind of chose a swan for the Riesling. So the idea was that Riesling's pretty elegant, it's quite delicate, and that was meant to be kind of stylistically a nice nod to the style of the wine. So 100% Clare Valley. This is actually from a single vineyard up in the Clare. So we have two masters of wine on the winemaking team, but we actually make our wine up in a contract crush station in the Adelaide Hills, not too far from here. And the guy who owns that facility actually had a lot of experience at Barossa. So he worked at Barossa in the Clare for about 8 years. He's one of the top producers in the region. So he has some good connections on the vineyard front. So we managed to get an introduction to this vineyard. So a single site, about 25 years old. And with this style, it's bone dry. So we're aiming for something which is just really crisp and fresh and just really typical of the region.
But it's got some lovely floral notes in it, citrusy, swords.
Yeah, just really limey, zesty, and fresh. And the idea with this style is the way we make it, it's mainly free-run juice, which is the kind of first juice that comes out of the crusher or out the press. And that tends to be the freshest and the kind of highest in acid. So what that gives you is a lovely freshness. The other thing we do with this wine is we give it a little bit of lees contact, which is just when you ferment the wine, the yeast falls out, and the dead yeast is called lees. So if you leave the wine in contact with that for a little bit of time, you get a bit of extra texture. And so the idea for us is something nice and fresh and elegant with a bit of kind of mouth-filling texture as well. So hopefully makes the wine a little bit more seasoned.
Yeah, it definitely has got a little bit of the textures. You're right. It's just there. It sits and lingers in your mouth and fills that mouth up. And I feel Riesling's get a bad rap too often. I really it's such a great wine, and there's so much character in there. There's nice tanginess, good dryness. It's a great food-driven wine.
I think it's such diverse wines. You know, it's the perfect thing as aperitif style. So kind of pre-dinner, you can enjoy it. But I kind of think it's great with seafood. So the nice thing about Riesling is it's really mouth-watering and crisp and high acid. And that makes it kind of perfect for food pairing, especially with seafood. For things like the kind of oysters that you guys have put on the menu, it's kind of ideal.
Perfect. Well, I'm definitely going to be rating that for our seafood platter when that goes out. So, mate, that's a great one to get us going. And then we hop all the way to Adelaide Hills, where you have your Sauv Blanc. Now, just with these wines, I know the Riesling and the Sauv Blanc on 2020, that would have been fire affected.
Well, absolutely. So, I mean, we were quite lucky. So the winery where we make all of our wines is in the Adelaide Hills. It's just outside of, it's basically on the outskirts of kind of Lenswood, really just outside the township of Woodside. Now, in 2020, in December, in the Langhorne Creek fires, the fire came relatively close to the winery. We were quite lucky. The wind changed direction when it was only about 10k from the site, and then kind of it went in the opposite direction. But I was kind of some of the growers that we work with up there weren't so lucky, unfortunately. So in the hills, historically, we worked with one main vineyard that was only 5k, really kind of between us and Woodside. And unfortunately, that entire vineyard was destroyed in 2020. Wow. So we had to kind of scramble a little bit, and we were able to get a parcel of fruit from this site in Kaipo. So it was actually the first time we'd worked with this vineyard. Kaipo slightly further south, so it was kind of a good bit from the fire. So luckily it wasn't smoke affected. Yeah. And yeah, we're pretty lucky to get hold of some fruit in 20 because there was so much demand because there was such a shortage because of the fires. Yeah. So we got a parcel. We just made a small quantity in 20. I think we made about 600 cases is all we produced. So everything we do is pretty small batch. And it's from a 25-year-old vineyard. And I guess in terms of kind of style, look, Adelaide Hills, I think, is kind of one of the most famous homes for Sauvignon in the country, along with Margaret River. The nice thing that Adelaide Hills has going for it as a region is a slightly higher altitude. So a lot of the vineyards up here are kind of between 350 to sort of 500 meters above sea level. And the higher up you go, the cooler it gets at night, and the fresher the wine style remains. So it's kind of perfect for that fresh character we were talking about the Riesling, but also helps kind of give you a longer ripening season. So it helps develop those kind of more complex aromatics. So really fresh and zesty and lifted. And yeah, so the idea behind this label, we kind of, this was the last wine we introduced to the range. So it's called the Sophistica. So the idea behind this, balance, poise, and elegance. Feline perfection is what we're...
It's got a beautiful light grapefruit flavor lingering through, and I quite like that. It's a little bit different from your traditional like Marlborough Sauv Blanc. It's still got a nice youthful palate. It's really nice. But I think it doesn't knock you around and get you not too heavy, I guess.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea. So for us, really, the two masters of wine that I work with, they came historically more from a kind of on-premise distribution background originally, and we wanted the style of all of the wines that we make to be kind of fresher and elegant and kind of not too heavy. So we kind of really came from a background in the UK where, like in Australia, most wine is consumed on its own, or I think 70% of wine is consumed without food. So where the food side, the pairing side is important, it's probably less so than on the continent where 70% is consumed with food. So we're kind of aiming for freshness and by the glass balance.
Yes, nice. Probably why I like it so much, mate. It's I just find too many Sauv Blancs have too much. It's like drinking a craft beer all of a sudden.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
So that was the Sauv Blanc, the Riesling. Now you've got the Chardonnay here. Now this has got all the animals on them.
Yeah, so we wanted to introduce a range that was even more value for money. So just last year, 2018, for the first time we introduced a red and a white pair. So this kind of price tier is slightly beneath the other guys, which are called Wild and Wilder. So we called this the Wild Ones, which kind of seemed appropriate, and chucked all the animals on the front.
Nice.
And we've come just with a kind of South Australian Chardonnay here. So kind of following the same style of wanting a bit of texture, a bit of value for money, and a bit of fun to it, but nothing too expensive. So the idea for the Wild Ones is kind of, it's perfect for midweek drinking, perfect for just having friends around and enjoying it. Nothing too serious. Yeah, so we get this from a couple of sites that we work with, kind of slightly further inland. And in terms of winemaking, this again just gets a couple of months of lees contact. So the main thing we try and do with our whites is just we think that adds a little bit of texture, a little bit more interest. So any kind of textural character on that is more from the lees than obvious oak influence. And that's the 2020 vintage, so we've just moved on to that. So just really nice and fresh, not too heavy.
It's you're right. It's I think that's a wine that's very just easy drinking, couple of friends. I think no matter your style of wine, you'd enjoy that because it's not a big, heavy Chardonnay by any means. So, but that's really good. I think people enjoy that Chardonnay. I think it's I think people have gone back to that nice, easy drinking, dry white wines. If you're hearing the sizzle behind, the chef's cooking dinner tonight. He's warming up the ovens.
Well, that's great. Like that's part of the backdrop here, which is probably screaming children. So apologies if there's any interference in the background.
Yeah, you can't hide. I come to work to get peace and quiet, but at home I've got raging kids as well. It's terrible.
I know, I envy you. Everyone's in that boat with the kind of BBC News broadcaster last year. So they burst in. Apologies.
Excellent. Just to with these wines, the leaving on lees is what they call the batonnage when you turn the lees over. Is that right?
Yeah, we try and do a little bit of batonnage, so it kind of that just enhances a little bit of texture on the whites. So we don't really do so much with the Riesling. We're not looking for too much texture on that wine, but often when we're working with Chardonnay, that's exactly how we'll do it. And when we're doing more premium Chardonnay, we'll tend to leave it a little bit longer and give it a bit of batonnage just to add. Really kind of helps bring out that flavour and just enhance the mouthfeel. So,
excellent.
Which kind of
now I'm really excited because you get onto what I like drinking, which is the Shiraz. Now that's probably one of our biggest selling wines here, and you've got
the opportunity.
There you go.
Yeah,
so the opportunity.
Yeah, so this is one of the original sketches. So both this guy and the Cabernet that we'll try were done by this kind of cartoonist, J.J. Abrams. And so that's the vulture head I was talking about. That was kind of the inspiration for the name and the original kind of inspiration for the rest of the series. And look, it's always been Langhorne Creek. So this is 100% from Langhorne Creek. So for those who don't know, Langhorne Creek is kind of slightly further south, and it's more famous cousins of sort of Barossa and McLaren Vale.
Yeah,
it's further south on the Fluvial Peninsula, but it's effectively kind of an extension of the same region as McLaren Vale, in some senses in terms of kind of soil profile. The climate is slightly cooler. Main influences down here are you're right next to a big lake called Lake Alexandrina, which is about 3 times the size of kind of Sydney Harbour. So it's quite a big water mass. And the main difference here versus McLaren Vale, which is slightly more Mediterranean and slightly warmer in the growing season, is they get these kind of cooling breezes that come straight off the Antarctic and they come across the water, and it kind of moderates the warmer temperature in summer. So the average temperature down there, it's still warm, but it's not as warm as McLaren. And as a result, the wines tend not to be as big. But for those who don't know, it's a really historic region, one of the oldest in the country. And they've been making wine down there since about 1860.
I got to say, I'm really excited. Now, tell me, I know a lot of Langhorne Creek wines tend to get, especially Shirazes, tend to go into, French oak? Is that the same with this one?
Absolutely. So our preference is to work mainly with French oak. I think this 19 actually got a little bit of US oak just because there was a little bit in the winery as well. But we mainly work with French oak. So the idea here is, again, we're looking for freshness in a style that's not too heavy. So we'll actually ferment the Cabernet and the Shiraz in stainless steel just to keep a bit of freshness. And then they get about 8 months of oak contact, and mainly older French oak. And slightly bigger format as well. So hopefully that gives a little bit of kind of complexity and oak character in the background without a style that's too heavy. So we want it to be typical of Shiraz, but not too rich. We want you to be able to enjoy it on its own, basically. But some a really good plot of, so this comes from a couple of blocks down in Langhorne Creek. There's a couple of growers, almost all the growers down there are 5th generation, it seems. And so we work with a couple of guys who've been there for over 100 years in terms of the family history. The vines are about 25 years old. And look, Langhorne Creek it gets overlooked often domestically. But I think those in the know realise that historically a lot of the fruit from here has gone into some of the best wines of some of the bigger companies in South Australia.
No, that's really lovely balanced wine.
Yeah, we're pretty happy with this actually. So this even just picked up a Best Buy award from Wines and Spirits magazine in the US, just at the tail end of last year. So just really kind of aiming to over deliver at this price point. And again, we don't make that much. This is probably our biggest volume on the Shiraz. We make about 2,500 cases a year, which is relatively not big volume.
Nice. And I've got something else in there, but is it not the spice, but it's a bit of like a leatheriness? I'm trying to think what to describe it.
Well, there's a kind of slight, I definitely get a kind of cedary spice note from the French oak.
Cedary, yeah.
And there's definitely kind of some black fruits, almost kind of black cherry, and maybe a bit of black olive as well. So a little bit of texture, not too chewy.
No.
I think that's looking good.
That's good. Now, I'm curious. The next one, the GSM, I'm seeing a big rise in the Matero wine grape coming into Australia. You seeing a lot more of that being made recently?
Oh, look, it's interesting. I think it's there's a good bit of older vine material about.
Okay.
So actually, I think this year we've just managed to get a little parcel of fruit from McLaren Vale, this Mataro. That's from my kind of vineyard, which is about 80 years old. So I think historically it was one of these grapes that we used to use for fortified wine in South Australia as well. But I guess it was probably most commonly used in this blend, so a GSM blend. And, yeah, I think you are starting to see a few more guys just experimenting with it on its own. But historically, it's always been a kind of blending component. So the idea behind this wine actually, just to show you this, I think we did this for the first time in 2016. And at the time we made it, we thought it was the best wine we had made in the range. So there's a phrase, an elephant never forgets. So we called it the unforgettable and chucked an elephant head on the front label. So that could have gone one of two ways, but thankfully it was well received and people liked it. So so this is about 60% Grenache. We kind of handle the Grenache in this really gently. So we're aiming for a kind of fresher, more red-fruited style here. So we wild ferment it in open-top fermenters, and we do everything by hand. So we're aiming for something which is not too heavy, not too dry.
Yeah.
So it's about 60% Grenache, roughly, and then we've got about 30% Shiraz, which we work with from those same growers in the Langhorne Creek. And then we get a bit of old vine Mataro in here from the Riverland. So we're working with a couple of old sites in the Riverland from old soldier blocks. And that just adds, it's only 10%, but adds a real kind of chunky, darker fruit character and a bit of backbone to the wine. So if we get this nice kind of fresher, red fruited, more aromatic Grenache, a nice kind of vibrant core of Shiraz, and then this kind of backbone of Mataro.
It's on the lighter side for a GSM, which is nice. It's not overly spicy, but it's definitely got those characteristics there. It's keeping it nice, and which I think is nice when you're having food. But it's
we're definitely aiming for a kind of more modern style Grenache-led wine with this product. Historically, the kind of GSM style has been much richer, much bigger. But I think we're seeing this kind of broader move in the market towards kind of fresher styles. And we think Grenache, particularly for us, stylistically kind of suits that kind of fresher, earlier pick, not as heavy. Kind of fits what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it's something very different, and I'm actually really liking it. I'm seeing especially in the restaurant, I'm seeing people go for more lighter red wines at the moment, just because it's easier with bigger groups. It's you can drink it longer through the night. Maybe you can have a few more bottles. I don't know what it is, but we're seeing definitely a move in that direction. And then people starting to chill their red wines a little bit more, which is good. I think that's what people should be doing.
Oh, completely. And I think that's the idea with this. Part of the reason we kind of hand work it is to kind of avoid getting too much of that kind of drying tannin, which really stands out like a sore thumb when red wine is chilled as well. So the idea is stylistically, these younger, fresher styles, you can have them with a bit of a chill on them, which is kind of perfect for the climate up there as well.
Yeah, it's perfect. Absolutely perfect. I think definitely hit the spot. And it's good to see there's lesser known grapes like Matera, they're coming out in the market. I'd love to see more grape varietals being pushed out. I mean, I remember Grenache 10 years ago, it was only blended. Now you get a bottle of Grenache, which I think you'll see Matera come out the same way soon. I think it'll be individual bottles and seeing more of that different styles come out, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and look, I think you're definitely seeing people be a lot more experimental. And I think some of these grapes as well, they're so suited to the climate down here in South Australia. They don't use as much water necessarily as some of the Shiraz. Grenache in particular seems to be really hardy down here. And I think it's now at a stage where actually some of the old bushvine stuff in South Australia, for the first time, is you're having to pay more for that than you are for some of the Shiraz down here.
Okay. Well, that's good, mate. Look, let's see what happens. We're going to hop into the cab now. This has got to be...
Okay.
That's this one here.
The Pugilist. So this is one of those original politicians on the... oops, wrong way. On the kind of the label. So this is one of the original sketches. So it's the kind of the old-fashioned political garb of French politics, I'm assuming. But the name of the Pugilist was meant to be a reference to kind of that old European description of the grape variety. So in Bordeaux and in Burgundy, stylistically, they sometimes talk about the idea of an iron fist and a velvet glove. And a pugilist is someone who's just a boxer or a fighter. And Cabernet in particular, in a lot of textbooks, is referenced as this kind of iron fist and a velvet glove idea. So it's got lots of power, but kind of combined with this beautiful elegance. So that was stylistically the idea behind the name. And look, this comes from the same grower, one of the growers that we work with for the Shiraz. So again, it's a really good plot of Cabernet, 25-year-old vines. And for me, this is actually, interestingly, in the red range, it's probably the most consistent wine year in, year out. So kind of the last 6 or 7 years that I've been here, every single year the Cabernet delivers, and it just comes in and it kind of looks varietal. The numbers are good, and yeah, it's just very typical of the grape, which is kind of why we love this wine so much.
But this one, you can smell a bit of higher alcohol content definitely coming through. But you still got that sweetness coming through. It's really...
Yeah, I think the thing I really like about this is Cabernet gives you a kind of slightly almost linear character. There's a freshness, but there's a focus to it. And it has this kind of lovely lifted, not quite capsicum, but kind of black and kind of red fruit note. And it's really kind of lifted. And I think that really kind of comes across on this wine. Like you can smell it, and I think it's really distinctly Cabernet amongst all of the wines we've tried today.
But that's nice. You can taste the cherry afterwards.
Mm. And again, hopefully not too heavy. We're aiming still for freshness down here. So across the range, we try and pick relatively early. And that allows us to be kind of lower intervention in the winery. It also means the style of the finished wine is just that little bit fresher.
And also this one is vegan and vegetarian.
Yeah, well, actually, our full range in Australia can suitable for vegans and vegetarians as well. So we don't use anything kind of fish-related or no egg whites for fining or any of that. So so perfect for your clients. And for those who eat meat, it's kind of perfect with a bit of steak as well.
Yes, easy.
And again, similar small production. So the Cabernet is not far behind the Shiraz, just over a couple of thousand cases a year. But I think that's looking really good.
Yeah, no, it's and so this one I think is the one that is whole berry pressed, which is a little bit different to the other one. So this is you press with is everything still on the vine on the stalk?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so we will look with the Cabernet and actually the Shiraz a little bit as well. What we do is we try and leave a lot of whole berries in the ferment. So what we do is normally when you bring the berries in, they go through this roller. You go through the crusher and they have this roller which helps take the stalks away from the berries. And what we do is we kind of leave the roller actually helps crush the berries up as they drop through. So we open that up as far as we can go, and then it lets a lot more kind of whole berries fall into the fermenter. And then what it does, without getting too technical, it gives you a bit of intracellular fermentation. So what happens is the fermentation happens inside the grape, and it just means that there's a bit less extraction of the grape skins. So it doesn't get too dry, too heavy, and there's a kind of freshness to the final wine. So that's the kind of idea behind it. Again, the reason for doing it is just to kind of help this fresh character that we're looking for.
Excellent. That's really interesting to know that. And I think there is a different style in terms of crushing early, keeping whole, and all that affects the winemaking process and how the wine's going to come out at the end. And I think the more people need to be more educated on that process to understand what they're going to get at the end of the day.
Oh, well, look, I mean, that's the interesting thing about the process, is that you can take it to the nth degree in any direction and kind of carve off parcels of vineyard and play around with them. And Giles, who I work with, he kind of, every year he reckons if he's not messed something up, he's not trying hard enough. So we always try and be a little bit experimental. And to be honest, even the move to the kind of name Wild and Wilder was this idea a couple of years ago that we'd let's try kind of different things a bit more easily. So, and it was that kind of vintage that we started doing some Italian varietal stuff as well on the side, just to mix it up.
That's really good. Now we're getting into the end of the range. Bridge of Tears. I know this is not from you guys, but have you had this before?
I have had it once, actually. So Ben, who you work with and does our distribution down in Sydney on the range, I think I had a dinner with him at kind of Christmas night, pre-COVID. So they're great wines. So
just before Paddy, I really appreciate your time and sharing your range with us. I just want to let everyone out there know that, you can discover more and more about the Wild and Wilder range. That's their website there, and you can hop on down, check them out. They do some great wines. They have some other wines in there as well. You have, is it a black label, like special label wines that you do, special vintages that I saw on your website that they look exciting. I'm angry with Ben for not bringing any over to me.
Oh, well, look, I'll get a bottle to you. So no, we tried, there was a couple of kind of smaller format things that we had a shop with called Tabula Rasa, which just means clean slate in Latin. And we just did a field blend, red and white, and we did them in small kind of 500 ml bottles. So they're meant to look like beer bottles, just for a bit of fun. So I'll get you a couple of bottles over there. But look, and the only other thing I should mention is, unfortunately, we don't have a cellar door yet. But if any of your guys are coming over to South Australia or Adelaide and want to have a closer look at what we do, then get them to just get in touch and they can drop me a line through the website.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I definitely make sure you hop onto the website. But we'll be doing tastings of the wine throughout the weekend. Come on down, try the wines out, drink the wine by the bottle or by the glass. And I'm really excited to each month feature a dynamic winery like yourself, Paddy, that's doing some cool stuff, making good wines. Because I think that's what restaurants need to do. We need to share your stories and share your wine. I think that's an exciting position I have here, and I'm looking forward to this month to sharing your story with the Central Coast. So thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your time today and for your support this coming month. I hope it goes well for you and your clients.
Cool. Well, mate, I'm gonna love and leave you there. And look, please don't not send me those wines. I'm gonna phone Ben after this. Actually, no, I'm joking. I'm really excited with what you're doing. I'm looking also to see what you guys do with your Italian varietals, and we love sharing new varietals here because that's what we're passionate about. So keep up the awesome work, and we look forward to drinking all your wine, mate. I never say that often, but I can to you today.
Good man. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thanks again. Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right, Paddy. See you later, big fella. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. All the best.
All right, there, guys. That's Wilder and Wilder. They amazing job. Make sure you check them out. Come try their wines here. That's what we're doing. All right, so we're going to get on to a couple of things. We're going to get on to Bridge of Tears. I got to say, this wine from Logan Estate will be one of our 2 boutique wines. So I told you I've got an exciting wine to talk to you about. The other one is this one. It's a white Grenache. Yes, a white Grenache. Le Via Riffi Blanco from just in Spaniola area, and I want to show you exactly where. But let's get into the rigid tiers. This is the fun part of the session because I get to drink wine and you get to watch it and be very jealous. So let's do that. Now, this is our boutique wine. We sold this at $20 a glass in the restaurant and as a bottle. I'm going to pour myself an extra big glass for this one. Okay, here we go. It's tough work, this. Someone has to do it. So this is actually made in open fermentation. And they say it's plunged twice a day. That's getting the lees out and really enhancing the sitting on the skins. Ooh, is that good? It smells amazing. Okay, so this is a 2018 Mudgee Shiraz. You can see by the color, dark, quite intense. Mm. Mm. Nice spices like getting fennel, oregano, bit of cocoa bean. Quite soft texture, not overly big tannins, just right amount. Nice soft texture, nice, really good long finish in your mouth. So they sit this on about 5 years in barrels, and it really, you get it, you feel it. So again, this is a medium old. I think it's about 600 meters above sea level in Mudgee. Definitely worth it, every cent. So clean, good spice, nice tannins, lots of plum, spices, berries. It's all there. All right, don't mind my staff. They're always noisy. So we're going to go backwards now, but that's fine. I don't mind that. This is an exciting wine. I've never had a white Grenache before, and I really wanted to share this with you guys because I know we're into Australian wines. We're drinking lots of Australian wines, but this is something we've got to try. I think there are 1 or 2 vineyards in Australia doing this as well, since I've researched it. But this area is, I'll show you where it's from. So just over there, it's called Terra Alta. So you got Madrid in the middle, Barcelona on the right, and it's just up there. So, and this area, it's inland. So it's not on the coast, it's just inland. And this is what they do, white Grenache. Not big numbers. They're about 400 or 500 meters above sea level altitude-wise. Oh, come on. Gotta get. Oh, there you go. Cork as well, which we love. Okay, nice Mediterranean white wine. Okay. So that's that. Find a glass. And let's get into it. Let's have a look at the color. Now, one thing you'll notice about when you put your nose to it, it's powerful. You know this is going to be an interesting wine. So this is 2017. You can taste the minerals, that classical European style. Mm. So it's definitely set on barrels, that's for sure. It's hard to describe. It's not a Chardonnay, but it's in that kind of space. It's got a lovely barrelness to it. It's got French barrels, but it's still a nice dry white wine with a lot of character, a lot of interest oozing out of it. vivaciousness would probably be a word I'd use. And you can probably sit this. It's beautiful. Mm. And what I've been told about this wine is it's a real blend of new and old. They've used modern technology in terms of making the wine, but they still, the craftsmanship is still that old school winemaking traditions have still maintained in this process. You're not going to try anything else. I've never had a wine like this before, and it's beautiful. I would highly recommend it. So this month at the Lake House, come try a Blanco, a white Grenache from Spain, 2017. By the glass or the bottle for something a little different, because that's what we do at Cecilias. So, guys, that's our Cellar Door pop-up for March. You've got the beautiful Wild and Wilder range, some reds, whites, by the glass, by the bottle. That's our house wine for March. And then we got our boutique wines as well for you to try something a little bit more sophisticated, something different, something you might not ever have had before. So thank you for joining us for our March pop-up Cellar Door. I'm super excited bringing these wines each month. Stay tuned, follow us, join us, and hopefully we'll see you in the restaurants over the coming weeks to try these awesome wines. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you around. Chat soon, and make sure you drink good wine.